Guys, good evening. We'll discuss the budget that was presented by the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman on the 1st of February 2025. This session will focus on some very basic aspects, some terms we'll discuss. We'll look at the state of the global economy. We'll look at the state of the Indian economy as well. We'll also look at the allocations to various sectors, but most importantly, we'll look at what has been the emphasis of this budget and what has been the guiding factor that actually has seeped through the entire budget document. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me take you through this very first talk. This is going to be on how is the world economy doing. The world economy is doing not so okay. You would say it's okay if you look at the numbers, but not so okay if I would look at the numbers, by interpreting them differently. Ladies and gentlemen, you look at these numbers. These are all from the International Monetary Fund. Now, the International Monetary Fund is one of the two major global organizations, the other being the World Bank, that often come out with on a regular basis. They come out with these kinds of guesstimates because see all these numbers like these came out in October 2024. Now these are all conjectures, like this is what the numbers would be, this is what the growth rate of the economy would be. So you all know what's GDP, gross domestic product. This is the total money value of all goods and services produced in one country in 1 year. So guys, the world economy is likely to grow at the same rate of 3.2% this year like it did last year. That's 3.2%. Now, what about the other major entities here? Look at the European Union. It's not been doing well. The European Union, as you know, comprises 27 countries. It's not exactly going gung-ho. In fact, there are certain countries within the European Union that are facing a great deal of trouble. Like, for example, Germany has had 2 consecutive years of contraction. That is, in 2024, their economy contracted. That is, they produced less GDP over what they produced in 2023. Now, 2023, again, they had contracted. They had contracted over their output had contracted over the number in 2022. So for 2 consecutive years, financial years, calendar years, we are looking at calendar years, both doubling as the financial year. In both cases rather, in either case, as you can say, we have had Germany, suffering a great deal. No other country, in fact, in the European Union is doing well, except tiny countries. But as such, the European Union does not count much in global economy today. You look at, before we come to India, let's look at the United States. United States last year grew at 2.8%. Again, this I said grew at, this is again a conjecture. The final numbers would be out only about 3 to 6 months from now. I'm talking of the final numbers. Okay, because these numbers are subject to revision, quite a lot of revision. So the United States economy grew at 2.8%, but you have to budget for the fact that their total GDP is about $30 trillion. $30 trillion, and that growing at 2.8% is a humongous total absolute number. Now, that's likely to come down this financial year. When I say financial year again, let me repeat, it's a calendar year, okay? Because for the IMF, for the World Bank, for China, for Japan, the calendar year doubles up as a financial year. In America, it's also the corporate financial year, that is January to December. But when it comes to the central bank, the financial year starts on October 1st and ends on 30th September of next year. Now, in India, we start our financial year on 1st of April and end on 31st of March next year. Now, let's take this further. Now, Donald Trump is a new president of the United States. Of course, he's been there in the past between 2017 and 2021. But the fact that he has promised a lot of tariffs and all could bring down the growth. Why? We'll discuss in a while. Let's look at China's numbers. 4.8% is what they have claimed to grow. Have what the IMF says the Chinese have grown it. It's a number that you can barely trust because China is suffering a great deal in a different sense. I'll come to that. I'll bring to you an analysis of what's happening in China. Now, let's look at the number for this year, 4.5%, 4.5% of the total amount of about let's say round figure of $19 trillion. 1 trillion is 1,000 billion. So 19 trillion is 19,000 billion, my friends. Okay. So that again is a pretty big number. So the second largest economy in the world is again likely to see a shortfall in their projected growth rates. What about India? Well, we grew, the IMF said 7% in the calendar year last year, and we are likely to grow at 6.5% this year. Again, conjectures. Okay. But why, you may wonder, we should be discussing the budget, but why are we discussing the global economy? Ladies and gentlemen, it is important to understand in what context, in what kind of a world, in what state of the world economy are we presenting this budget. Because as you would understand, the budget is a statement of revenues and expenditures, and all these are subject to a lot of variables, especially variables that are beyond our control, that are happening around the world. Look at, for example, higher inflation. Now, world over, we have had higher inflation, and this came in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. Supply chains were disrupted because of shutdowns, lockdowns in in different parts of the world. And China, among large countries, has had the biggest, the longest, shutdown. And as you know, China produces most of the world's goods. Their exports last year in 2024 were about $3,500 billion. Ladies and gentlemen, $3,500 billion is a lot of exports, isn't it? Their imports were just about 2.6 trillion, that is 2,600 billion. Okay, that they have a trade surplus of $992 billion. Yes, $992 billion is the amount by which their exports outdo their imports. But they have been exporting for long, in such large numbers. But when China shut down, it led to supply chain disruption, plus the wars in Ukraine and recently in Gaza, in the West Asia. So they all disrupted supply chains. And that, ladies and gentlemen, led to a rise in prices everywhere in the world. And that's what high inflation is about. When high inflation came about the world over, central banks, what they did was they, raised the interest rates, because interest rates is one way of sucking in money into the system. Extra money, during the COVID pandemic, they had lowered interest rates to make sure that people could borrow money at low rates of interest. Business persons, ordinary people could, borrow money. Money was cheap in those days. But as inflation went about after COVID, after the world economy opened up, interest rates went up because of higher inflation. When interest rates go up, people see that loans have become expensive. When loans become expensive, you and I would not borrow money. If you're a business person, you would not borrow much money, because that would eat into your, profits. So you kind of postpone economic activity. Okay. When you postpone economic activity, what happens is that, overall economy goes down. You will not be the only producer who will postpone expenditure. Thereby the production goes down. Thereby employment goes down. Thereby a lot of people have pretty low incomes or no incomes, which would mean that there is a vicious cycle of, no jobs, no incomes, no demand for goods and services. Again, this feeds this vicious cycle. So this is what's been happening in different parts of the world. Fortunately, in India, that didn't happen. Geopolitical tensions. Yes, there are geopolitical tensions like we have had in Ukraine. The war in Ukraine started in Feb 2022. Ever since then, there has been a disruption in wheat supply, oil supply from Russia, gas supply from Russia. And the recent war in what is this place, West Asia, has had its own, attendant problems. And it also led to a spike in oil prices. Oil goes into everything, and this being the fuel that runs the world, it also led to a spike in inflation everywhere in the world. So China, we discussed. China, what kind of slowdown we have had in China? See, China, many people would say that Chinese economy is huge. It is huge. It's $19 trillion, large. But ladies and gentlemen, 30% of these $19 trillion comes from the real estate sector. The real estate sector. And in the last 2.5 years, the real estate sector in China has crashed. It has crashed, and consequently, the companies that were involved in this had piled a lot of debt. They defaulted on the money they owe to state government banks, or we are talking of private banks and all. That has had a cascade impact. A lot of people in China who had bought flats, who had bought housing units, saw that most of these housing units had no value because the prices of the housing units also crashed. Consequently, their investments were not worth much. Now, add to this another issue. There has been slowdown in China because of the crackdown on the tech sector, the crackdown on the education sector. So a lot of unemployment has come up in China as well. Of course, you don't see these numbers in many journals around the world, but that's how things are. Now, what about the protectionist trade policies? Now, see, you would find that a lot of nations around the world, the Chinese among them, the Indians as well, of course, are now worried about what Donald Trump might do. Just this morning, in fact, last evening, Donald Trump imposed tariffs. Tariff is a tax, okay? So on imports from Mexico, from China, from Canada. So when goods from China come into the United States, an extra tariff is levied, which means that they become expensive. As they become expensive, their competitiveness is eroded. You understand that? That also means that consumers will look for cheaper alternatives. If there is a domestic product available which is cheaper and maybe slightly lower quality or equal quality, consumers will pick that up. So China would suffer. That's the idea, nothing more than this. We in the budget have had this now. The idea, my friends, that we are immune from Donald Trump is misplaced. Actually, this fear is not misplaced. This confidence is misplaced that we are immune from Donald Trump. In the budget yesterday, the finance minister lowered duty on imported bikes. These bikes are pretty expensive. They range between 13 and 39 lakhs if we are discussing just Harley Davidson. In one of his speeches last year, in campaign speeches, Donald Trump had said that we export our bikes to India. They impose 100% duty. We import their bikes into India, into the United States, and we impose zero duty. That's unfair. India is being unfair to us. So if I come to power, I will impose tariffs on Indian bikes as well. So to preempt what Donald Trump might do, what we have done is we have reduced the customs duty to 20%. Now that again, of course, is to appease Trump, because imported bikes don't have a huge market in India. 13 to 39 lakhs, take it easy, isn't it? But it's sending a message. We are sending a message, a political message to Donald Trump that look, we are working on things. We can always sort it out. So this is the kind of world we are in today. Things are not so cool. Though the IMF says the world economy is steady, no, there are a lot of tensions, my friends. A lot of tensions. So how is the Indian economy doing in light of what has the budget been presented? So the budget mentioned certain growth rates. What are the growth rates? I am mixing data from the economic survey with the budget numbers. Please understand, I'm mixing the data from the budget numbers, the economic survey with the budget numbers. So all are authentic. These are not my numbers. These are Government of India numbers. Okay, and we have to go with what the Government of India says. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's look at this financial year 24. In the previous financial year, we grew at 8.4%. Think about this, 8.4%. That's huge, my friends. But then we had a small low base effect also. Financial year 23, COVID and all that, leftover pain. On that, we grew at 8.4%. But look at this financial year, the one that is going to end on 31st March, the coming month rather. We remember this FY25 simply indicates One, the financial year that started on 1st April 2024 and one that would end on 31st March 2025. 2025. Okay, that's why this number always indicates the month, the year in which the financial year ends. So we are currently in financial year 25. This year we are likely to grow at 6.4%. This is again a conjecture, because the first 6 months we grew at 6%. 6%, because in first quarter, April to June last year, we grew at 6.7%, and the second quarter we grew in the second quarter we grew at 5.4%. 5.4%. So yeah, 5.4%. So you take an average of 6%, essentially. That's it. You add this two up, you get about 6% off yearly. Okay. So in all, my friends, this, the finance ministry has been saying this. It is just repeated what the RBI had said, that we are likely to grow at 6.4%. Now, what is the growth likely to be this financial year, coming financial year, the one that would start on 1st April 2025 and end on 31st March 2026? We are likely to have a growth of 6.3 to 6.8%. It's a window. Okay. So take an average of 6.5%. This is still commendable by global standards. We are growing at the fastest rate, growth rate, fastest rate for any major economy in the world. But ladies and gentlemen, our Prime Minister Narendra Modi had been talking about Viksit Bharat, a fully developed country, fully developed India by 2047. That will be the 100th anniversary of the independence of our country. Ladies and gentlemen, to be a fully developed country, we would need to grow at 8% on an annual basis. Every year, at least 8%. But what have we been growing at? Around 6.5%, which is not sufficient. Okay. But then, this again, we may not know what might happen in the future. So the future is always uncertain. So what is this sectoral contribution to GDP? We have three primary sectors. We have agriculture and allied activities. Allied activities would include, we have, animal husbandry, floriculture, pisciculture, and the secondary sector is industry, and the tertiary sector, TER is 3, this is services sector. Now, in all of these things, you look at agriculture, it's phenomenal growth. 3.8% is a very good rate of growth. We'll decode this in a while. Look at industry. Things are not been very good at the industry level. 6.2%, services 7.2%. But then, in some sources, you will find that we don't have just 3 sectors, we have 5 sectors. Quaternary, quinary, and all that. Okay. So let's not discuss those. Let's look at the traditional 3 sectors: agriculture, industry, and services. So let's break this now. This is sectoral outlook that comes from the economic survey. I've gone through the entire economic survey of 487 or 490 pages or something. I can tell you, my friends, this is what the survey says. Okay. Agriculture has done remarkably well, as I mentioned earlier, because of improved demand due to a good Kharif crop. Kharif is monsoon crop. So we have these majorly 2 seasons, Rabi and Kharif. Then you could add the 3rd season, Zaid, Z-A-I-D. But usually Kharif and Rabi. So monsoon season, Kharif, we have had a bumper crop. We have had good monsoon in most parts of the country. That also has led to a good crop, putting money into the hands of people, basically farmers and all. Which again, please understand, considering that agriculture contributes to agriculture, makes for nearly 44% of our labor force. What is India's labor force? 58 crore. 58 crore is India's labor force, and 44% of 58 crore are engaged in agriculture. 44% of 58 crore. Now, let me take you further on this. This again, you have to understand that improved incomes have put money into the hands of farmers. What are they doing? They are now going towards their nutrition intake has improved, and they are moving away from low nutrition stuff to high nutrition stuff. In most parts of India, you will find that the economy is doing well because of the rural demand. And you know what? There is a great offtake of processed food in some parts of India, especially in western part of India. Processed food, chips and all these things, biscuits, they are, they are selling at a brisk pace in rural areas. Poultry, fishes, fisheries, poultry, all these things are, they are being consumed in a much larger scale in rural areas than had happened in the past. Okay, so the rural area is what is the rural demand is what is driving a lot of companies, especially fast moving consumer goods companies. What about industry? Well, industry has not been doing very well, my friends. That's because overall global economy has not been doing well, and we are not an export driven market. Luckily, we are not an export driven market, unlike China. But in India also, the local conditions are quite wobbly. Yeah, uncertain domestic seasonal conditions, plus the fact that a lot of things that go into this industrial production, raw materials, commodities, they are called commodities. Iron ore, you have cotton, you have tobacco, a lot of these things, the prices have been very high. High commodity prices have eaten into the profits of the industry, which again has pushed their profits low, on the lower side. And they also are now cutting down on production capacities and everything, which again is not generating enough employment. Okay, now let me take you further on this services sector. This again has been our, after agriculture, our saving grace. We are doing quite well as far as services are concerned. But I mentioned a word, disinflation. It's been expanding quite fast because of disinflation. What is disinflation? Reduction in the rate of inflation. Reduction in the rate of inflation. Inflation, as you know, is basically a rise in the general price level. So if you read in the newspaper, inflation is 5%, at a general level, commonsensical bhasha, common man's bhasha, it simply means that exactly 1 year back, whatever was the price level of a basket of commodities, take a basket, the government takes a basket of commodities, it was 100 rupees last year. Now it is 105 rupees. Because the price, the inflation rate is 5%, it simply means the price of that basket of commodities has gone up by 5%, which also means that the purchasing power of your paisa has gone down by 5%. You buy 5% less. Now, let's say in November it was 5%, in December it came down to 4%. This decrease in the rate of inflation is called disinflation. Okay, I hope I am being clear, my friends. I'm trying to be as explanatory as possible. So I hope you got these numbers quite well. Yeah. So from here, let's look at our foreign trade. Again, we said that we are not a country that is immune to what's happening around the world, but we also have to budget for the fact that we are part of a globalized economy, or rather a globalizing economy. So in the global economy, or the fast globalizing economy, what has been our contribution? Ladies and gentlemen, these numbers are from the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, and these are from the DGFT, Directorate General of Foreign Trade. You look at these numbers here, you would find that our exports, these are exports, they had grown over these numbers. These are both goods and services. These $602 billion, take 603. Yeah, 603 is both of, the number is, it comprises both goods and services. Now the service imports, our imports traditionally have been higher than our imports. 682, 602. So that's the difference, my friends. We have always had a trade surplus when it comes to services. That is, when it's a surplus, when you export more than you import. When do you have a deficit? When you import more than you export. The difference between the exports and imports is called trade balance. It's called trade balance. Higher exports, lower imports, trade surplus. Lower exports, higher imports, trade deficit. Okay. So in India, when it comes to overall trade, yeah, look at this. Foreign trade actually went up in the first 9 months because of higher demand for our goods in some parts of the world. Now this number 603 includes merchandise exports of $322 billion. Okay, the rest is 280 something is services. So we actually sold $5 billion worth of merchandise, more than what we did in the same period, CP's corresponding period, that is April December financial year 24. Okay, When it comes to imports, of course, imports also went up. See, a higher imports effect actually mean the economy is doing quite well. What do you import? You mostly import oil, gas, you import commodities, iron ore, you import chemicals, electronic goods and all, which means there is a demand for these in the country, which means these are, these either go to the consumer or are used in the economy as raw materials. So there is a need for production. Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, these are the numbers, my friends. I just wanted you to become familiar with all these numbers. So, it is in light of this we should understand our budget. So, see, if we don't know these numbers, it becomes that much more easier for us to get confused. Okay, why would we, why would why would the finance minister, reduce customs duty on, let's say, something like electronic bikes, imported bikes? We may be able to understand the rich are getting all this. No, it's not rich, it's the common man who is getting benefited, because it's not the imported bike we are looking at. Okay, we are looking at Trump should not impact other sectors of the economy. That's how it is, especially those sectors with which the common man is associated. So let me explain a few more terms, and then I'll take you to a larger picture. What's a fiscal deficit? Sorry, a fiscal year. A fiscal year is a 12-month period, accounting period, uh, essentially that starts on the 1st of April and ends on 31st of March of next year. Okay. Now, what are the different types of accounts that we have? We have lots of types of accounts. Okay, the government of India has different types of accounts. Let me stand here so that I can bring to you the three different types of accounts. The most important account the government of India has is a consolidated fund of India. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most important account the government of India has. The most important account the government of India has. This is the account into which all revenues of the government of India, tax, non-tax revenues, everything. I'll explain what are these in a while. All revenues, okay, are deposited into this account. Whatever income tax you pay, whatever GST you pay is deposited into this account. From this account, all money are withdrawn towards expenses. So there is this particular scheme, NAREGA, money is required for that, withdrawal is made from this. So all revenues are deposited in this account. Money is monies, 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 okay, towards expenses is withdrawn from this account. Okay, and all of this require this withdrawal explicitly requires parliamentary approval. Remember, without parliamentary approval, no money can be withdrawn from the consolidated fund of India. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something more. Rather, you may ask this simple question. I'm just looking at some questions that are coming in as comments. So you look at something like the parliament is not in session. Say there are 3 times it's in session. Let's look at when it's in session: the budget session, the monsoon session, and the winter session. The rest of the times it's not in session. So in case it's not in session and the government of India needs to withdraw money, how will it basically withdraw money from this account? That could be a genuine question. Let me answer this one. That was a rhetorical question I raised, and I'm answering it. Ladies and gentlemen, right after the presentation of the budget, the finance minister presents something called the finance bill. Through this, she seeks a one-time approval of the Parliament of India for all kinds of withdrawals towards expenses. All kinds of withdrawals towards expenses from the consolidated fund of India. It's a one-time permission. That's about it. Okay. But without permission, nothing can be withdrawn. What about the next one? The next one is the contingency fund of India. Contingency means emergency. Something like, something that's unforeseen, basically. Okay. Now, in this kind of an account, my friends, money is kept to meet some kind of a calamity like earthquake, floods, flash floods, something that is calamitous, something that is destructive, Okay. Now, let me take you further on this. We take this forward on this. Very simple. What happens here is, when the parliament, even in the parliament is in session or not in session, money can be withdrawn without any permission from the parliament. Please know this, because this is to meet a contingency. As of today, 8,000 crore, it's there on the indiabudget.gov.in. on that budget website, you'll find this account. Contingency Fund of India has a total of 8,000 crore in that account. Ladies and gentlemen, that 8,000 crore, can be withdrawn by the government of India to meet some emergency. But please understand one more thing. Permission has to be sought from the parliament after the event. If the parliament is not in session, then the permission is taken after the parliament reconvenes. Okay, so once the MPs are back to the session, the government seeks permission that, look, we had to withdraw this money to meet this emergency. Usually, because it's a calamity, nobody objects to this. Fair? The last one, public accounts. Now, these are not government accounts. The first two are government accounts. The third one is not a government account. But ladies and gentlemen, what happens here is, these are accounts owned by people like you and me, but are kept in government's trust. What kinds of accounts are these? Postal savings, employees provident fund, public provident fund. All these sorts of accounts are actually kept in the government's trust. So the government of India uses this money to fund its expenses. You understand that? That's why it pays you interest. That's why you get interest on those accounts. Nothing more than that. Okay. So these are not accounts owned by the government, but effectively owned by people, you and me, people like us, common people of India, but are kept in government's trust. Okay. So whenever they are due, the government repays the due amounts. So let me now bring to you some basic definitions defining what is the budget about. It comprises, any budget speech comprises two parts. Part A is the economic survey, part 2 is a budget itself. So what's the economic survey? The economic survey is this. It's basically an evaluation, an assessment of the performance of the Indian economy in the current financial year. So this economic survey is tabled, the current latest economic survey will be labeled this, Economic Survey 2024-25. So how is the Indian economy doing is listed, is all evaluated in the economic survey. It is usually presented on, earlier it used to be 3 days before the budget, then came 2 days, now it's the same day, more or less either 1 day in advance or on the same day. This time it is 1 day in advance. Okay. Now, please understand, this actually is about a 9-month evaluation. 9 months evaluation. That's it. But 9 months are a great indicator of where the economy, how the economy will do in the next 3 months, the remaining 3 months of the financial year. Okay. So that's the economic survey. And what's the budget about? The budget, my friends, is basically a normal statements of revenues and expenditures the government would have in the coming financial year. So the government says we are going to get X revenue from income tax, Y revenue from GST, H revenue from stamp duty, whatever other things. So it would get some revenue that's mentioned here. It would have some expenses, salaries, pensions, defense allocation, rural development allocation. All expenses are mentioned here. So this is a statement of the expected revenues and expected expenditures. This is not sacrosanct. That is, it's not sacred that it cannot be tampered with, cannot be changed. So let me bring to you a few more things, my friends. Ladies and gentlemen, let me bring to you a few more ideas that you would normally find them in the budget, basically in the budget. So what are revenue receipts? I have put this in such a way that you can understand on your own without even my kind of explanation. Basically, my kind of explanation is I go quite deeper into this. You don't need it right now. Tax revenues. What kinds of tax revenues? Direct taxes like income tax, corporate tax. Now, what's income tax? Tax on the incomes of individuals. What is corporate tax? Corporate tax is also called company tax, also called corporation tax. Remember, corporate tax, company tax, corporation tax are all one and the same. Okay. Now, this is basically a tax in the common man's bhasha, tax on the income of a company. We're not looking at after profit, after expenses, after revenue, after depreciation. No, I'm simply telling you it's a tax on the income of a company. That's company tax. Okay. So GST is, of course, your goods and services taxes and all, indirect tax. Basically, you end up paying that. essentially when you buy a biscuit packet. What are basically dividends? Dividends are return on shares, returns on shares, or a return on shares. When you buy shares, you expect the company to give you a share in the profit of the company, because when you buy shares, you become a co-owner of the company. Why? Because when you contribute, when you buy shares, you buy a share in the company's capital. You become a co-owner of the company. When you become a co-owner of the company, you have a right to a share in the profits. That profit which is given to shareholders is called dividend. Simply put, distributed profit. Distributed profit. Okay. Stamp duty, basically it's all related to legal documents. You have this, legal stuff like, 100 rupees stamp paper and all that for real estate transaction or for any legal transaction. Let me take you further on this. Revenue expenditures, these are anything to do with revenue, basically everyday stuff. Okay, like routine expenses like salaries, pensions, all that stuff basically. Okay, the spending of this money does not lead to creation of any asset. So when you pay salary to someone, you're not creating any asset. The word asset is associated with the word capital. Okay, so what are capital receipts? Recoveries of loans. What are recoveries of loans? What kinds of loans are these? See, India would lend money to someone. Let's say we had lent money to Bangladesh. The money comes back. That is listed here. Recoveries of loans. Grants received. Let's say sometimes we receive, not now, earlier, Jamana, not now. We used to receive money we used to borrow money at extremely low rate of interest, low rates of interest, very low rates of interest, 2%, 1%, and all that. Now, sometimes it's free. That's why it's called grant. Okay. Nowadays, we don't receive anything. We don't require that kind of money at all. What are disinvestment? See, disinvestment, my friends, is the sale of government shareholding in a public sector company without transferring management control. Let me tell you, let me repeat this. The sale of government's shares or government shareholding in a public sector company without transferring management control. To explain this, we have, let's say, a company like Coal India Limited, okay, CIL. Let's say the government of India owns 80% of this company. 80% of the shares of this company are owned by government of India. It says, oh, we need money. See, the government of India always needs money. Okay, so it's always in search of money, where we can get money to fund our expenses. So it says, okay, we have 80% of shares in CIL. Why don't we sell some of the shares? So they decide to sell 5%. Okay, they decide to sell 5%. Let's say they raise something like 10,000 crore rupees, 10,000 crore. Okay, look, by selling this 5% stake, it still comes to 75, and 75 would mean you still are majority owners. You are not transferring any control of management to a private company, to the purchasing company here. So you retain the control, you retain the management control. Now, there is something called privatization. What is privatization? Disinvestment plus transfer of management control is privatization. Air India is a good example. Air India, in the past, there used to be a company called Modern Foods, which would make this bread and all. There was this company called VSNL, Videsh Sanchar Nigam Limited. There is this company called CMC, Computer Maintenance Corporation. All of these companies were privatized. Means they were sold to private companies. Now, no company, no government shareholding in any of these companies. Okay. Now look at this. Capital expenditure. Let me bring this down, my friends. I think it's come down quite down, basically. Any which way. So what is capital expenditure? This is all about creating assets. You spend money to create an asset. Building airports, building roads, building dams, building power plants. This is asset creation. That's why it's called capital expenditure. Capital expenditure. This is a term that's used quite often. CapEx in short. It's called CapEx. This, for example, in this budget, the CapEx announced is 11.2 lakh crore rupees. 11.2 lakh crore rupees, which is 10,000 crore more than last year's. Okay, last year it was 11.1. Now it is 11.2 lakh crore rupees. Where will this paisa go? This money will go towards building roads, primarily roads, ports. We are building a lot of ports along our long coastline. We are building, airports. We are building airports in a lot of places now. So all these basically is going towards that. Yeah. So basically, the idea is to generate not just assets but employment. What is it? employment. That's the idea. Okay. So this actually has been driving employment in rural areas. CapEx. Let me take you to the next one, ladies and gentlemen. What does the budget comprise? The budget comprises these things. Okay. I'll bring to you a particular graphic here, which is my favorite document in the entire budget stuff. Okay, when I look at the budget number, this is the favorite document that I have. I'll explain this in a while, but let's look at this. It comprises 4 columns. You can see here. These are the heads under which these 4 columns have numbers. 4 columns have numbers. Look at actuals. Okay, actuals. So these actuals here would be for 23-24. We are in financial year 24-25, but these are for last financial year. So it would take you at least 2 years to get the actual numbers. So this is how it works, my friends. Okay, what is the second one? These are budget estimates 24-25. Budget estimates 24-25. Ladies and gentlemen, this simply means that in the last budget, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman had envisioned, look, we are going to spend this much money on X thing, or we are going to get revenue, Y revenue from, let's say, we are going to get some revenue from Y thing. That was all listed here. That was all listed. But then she saw that things had changed, conditions had changed. Our revenue is going to be lower than what we had anticipated. So what happens is she brings in a third column, revised estimates. So these numbers are revised. These numbers are the revisions of these numbers. That's it, nothing extraordinary. See, the same financial year, this is at the time of presenting the budget. This is what we expect the numbers to be. But numbers could change depending on how the conditions evolve, basically. And these are the changed numbers. Like, for example, revenue receipts, total tax revenues of the Government of India, tax and non-tax revenues, were estimated to be 31,29,000 crore. It's at the top written in rupees crore. Okay, 31,29,000 crore was expected, but they ended up gaining. Now they say that we are not likely to get 31.29. We are likely to get 30.87 only. You got the numbers here? 43, nearly 43 crores, 43,000 crore lower than what they had anticipated. So these numbers are subject to revision. So where are the numbers for the coming financial year? Ladies and gentlemen, they are here. The budget estimates for the 25-26 financial year. So our expectation. Now, in the next budget, this column will come here and this could be revised. Got this? That's how it works. Okay. Now, I'll break this into small parts. You will find that certain numbers are there. There is something called fiscal deficit. What is it? Fiscal deficit. So, where is fiscal deficit? This is fiscal deficit. What is fiscal deficit? Simply the borrowing of the Government of India. Normal language, borrowing of the Government of India. So, fiscal deficit is a formula 9 minus 1 plus 5 plus 6 overall. Okay. Let us see, where does this go? I'll take you through this. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to become familiar with the numbers, my friends. I have actually created something like this. Fiscal deficit for you is this. See these numbers here. Item. Actual same numbers from the bigger, the graphic there earlier are now here. Look at this. The fiscal deficit definition talks of 16, which is total expenditure. And from this, you add these 3 and deduct these 3. Deduct these 3 from total expenditure, you will get these numbers here. That's it, nothing else. Why these 3? These indicate the revenue the government gets. And what revenue? Non-debt creating. Means getting this revenue does not mean that we are raising, through debt. This is what we are owed. This is without raising any loan. We are getting this money without raising loan. These are not loans. These are non-debt creating risks. So revenue receipts, tax and non-tax, recovery of loans, the money that was due to us, other receipts like dividends, stamp duty, all due to government. So you add up all this, and from that you deduct this total expenditure, you would get this number, 16,13,312 crores. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the total borrowing of the Government of India. So they had expected to borrow 16,13,000 crore rupees. Okay, That's a total borrowing, 16.13 lakh crore rupees. But the government tightened the purses. It stopped spending on a big scale. It cut down on expenditure in a lot of places. So now it says instead of borrowing 16.13 lakh, we are going to borrow only 15.69 lakh crore. See, 31 plus 13 here, 44,000 crore. So they are going to borrow 44,000 crore less. Yeah, which is a good thing, commendable thing. But I'm not a great fan of this, because the money can be always spent, especially when the economy is not doing well. But then let's look at something more. What are these numbers here? 4.9, 4.8. So to understand these numbers, I have something for you at the bottom. The GDP for financial year 25-26 is likely to be 356 lakh crore rupees, 356.9 cents. So take round figure of 357 lakh crore rupees. 357 lakh crore rupees is what we are going to produce in terms of goods and services this year, okay, in the coming financial year. But this is going to be 10.1% GDP growth rate, 10.1%. Now you may wonder, Arey Bharat, you mentioned not 10%, you mentioned 6, something like 6.5%, 6.3 to 6.8% you mentioned. No, you're talking of 10% here. Ladies and gentlemen, this is nominal. This is before inflation. Before inflation. So 10.1% minus inflation rate is what you will get the real GDP growth rate. What is it? Real GDP growth rate. So nominal minus rate of inflation will give you, the real rate of GDP growth. So ladies and gentlemen, 10.1% is what we are like to grow, but let's deduct the inflation part. And this number you see here, this is 4.8% of this number. If you calculate, you will get the same number. Okay, I don't want to calculate now, but this this number, 15,69,257 crore, is 4.8% of this number. So we are running, a country on debt, udhar. We don't have enough paisa, my friends. Enough paisa. Where is the paisa? There is no paisa. Okay. Is debt bad? Not really bad. But I'm going to skip this part, because earlier I thought that I would discuss why fiscal deficit is bad. High fiscal deficit is bad. It's not really important for you guys. Okay. But I'll just tell you a few things, very few things. I'll skip 1-2 points basically. How has the government of India achieved this? It cut down expenditure. It cut down expenditure. It actually has spent less. It borrowed less. It spent less. Okay. Now let me take you back to one more thing. Okay. Let me take you back to this particular graphic to tell you how big is the budget size. You see this. This is the total expenditure of the government of India. 50,65,345 crore is the total expenditure of the government of India in the coming financial year. Yes. You understand that? This is what we will spend in the next financial year. 50,65,000 crore rupees. But we have to get that money. How much are we going to get? We are going to get far less than that, because what is the total borrowing this year? In the next financial year, 15.68 lakh crore rupees. So we are going to fall short by about 16. Take a round figure of 16 lakh crore. 16 lakh. So we are going to realize a total revenue of 34 lakh, but the rest we'll borrow. We will borrow. But what's going to be the total expenditure? Around 50,000 crore rupees. Around 50,000 crore rupees. So from there, of course, I mentioned this. Let me take you to something more. I told you that it's cut down on expenses in a big way. The government of India has cut down on expenses in a big way. While it's not important for us to discuss where it has cut, but it has cut in a lot of ways. Like, for example, it's not spent enough on defense. See, defense allocation last year was some number, and of that, basically, it's the same as this year, actually, more or less the same year. But they could not spend 1.25 lakh crore rupees of what was given to them. The defense ministry did not spend 1.25 lakh crore on what was with them. It was allocated to them, but they did not spend to buy new weapons, everything. Okay, because buying weapons is a time consuming process. You place an order, you pay over a long period of time. Okay, like we ask for 80 Tejas aircraft, 40 Rafale aircraft, but 40 won't come off the shelf, na? As soon as, let's say, two come, we make payment for two, or maybe some advance payment for the rest. That's about it. Okay, so why is the government of India worried about raising fiscal, high fiscal deficit, that is high borrowings? So, ladies and gentlemen, the main reason is that higher government borrowing, see, because this is all borrowing, 16 lakh crore rupees would be borrowing, would mean that you and I would not have enough money. Where will the government of India borrow? Usually, it does not borrow from foreign countries. Contrary to what most people would think, it would not borrow from most people. Okay, so it would, you would have, it would, just a second, it would have the public. It would ask the public to pay, to lend money. Where will the, how does the government lend, borrow money? It issues bonds. It issues bonds. What kinds of bonds? Well, it issues bonds like public infrastructure bonds, or say, it could be railway bond, whatever kind of bond. But when the government, borrows money from the public, or it borrows from the banks and all, there is that much less money available with the banks to lend to people like us. So what happens is that higher government borrowings sucks in the paisa from the banks and the overall system. And that, ladies and gentlemen, creates higher interest rates. Less money is available in the market. When less money is available in the market, what happens? It leads to higher taxes. It leads to higher loans, higher interest rates, which would mean that you have to pay more to get the same loan, which is not a good thing. Most people don't buy expensive loans. And this again discourages economic activity. If you are a producer, basically, what would happen? You would not buy a loan. You would not buy a loan. That is, buying a loan means taking a loan. Okay, it's industrial. It's a business language. So when you take a loan, let's say in our language, when you take a loan, let's say you want to take a loan to buy, to buy raw materials, to set up a new factory, to manufacture bikes, expand production. But what's happening here? You're not doing that because people are not buying your bikes. There's no demand for bikes because the auto loans have increased. The rates of auto loan, the interest rates on auto loans have increased. So people see that everything is become expensive. They postpone expenditure. When they postpone expenditure, what happens? They look at something like the conserving money. They don't want to spend it all. Now the company also you see that there's no need for spending money, so you don't borrow. When you don't borrow, you don't create demand for employment. When employment demand is not there, what happens to, again, the vicious cycle? There is no employment generation, there is no income generation. There is no income generation means if I don't have money in my hand, I don't have purchasing power. If I don't have purchasing power, I don't have demand for goods and services. If I don't have demand for goods and services, and I'm not the only guy, there are millions of people like me, the overall economic activity goes down. So ladies and gentlemen, higher fiscal deficit is always bad for the entire economy, because it leads to expensive loans for the common man, for the industrialist, for business persons. So this is not important. The last one, I'll come to the next one. Where does the paisa come from? The government of India in the next financial year is going to spend 50,65,000 crore rupees. I took a round number. Okay, 50,65,000 crore rupees. Where is this going to come from? So this is going to come from, for every rupee, let's say, 50%. You see this. 24% will come from borrowings. Can you believe this? Nearly 25% of this 50,000 crore rupees will come from borrowings. I mentioned this a while ago. So we are going to borrow a humongous 16 lakh crore rupees in the coming financial year. Okay, 22% is the income tax. A lot of people are paying income tax. That's what they say. But you look at the GST, it's 18% now. So ladies and gentlemen, let me bring to you some numbers. Okay, some numbers. In 2018, 19, okay, take just 19, now why 20? Okay, the corporate tax was 54%. I'm taking a round figure, okay? It was something like 53.8%. I'm taking, okay? GST was this much. Fair? Now, I'm talking of corporate taxes, all corporate taxes, okay? Corporate taxes. all corporate taxes, not just GST, all corporate taxes. Today it is 46%. It is 46%. So the share of GST in direct taxes has come down considerably. The reverse has happened with the income tax. Individual taxes have gone up. Earlier it was 48% here for income tax. Now it is nearly 54%. It's more than that actually. It is more. Yeah, I'm sorry. It is now 46% for this. 46%. Okay. So more people are paying income tax, maybe you could say that, or maybe that more people are being the same number of people being asked to pay higher taxes. There could be anything. But then when do people pay higher taxes? Higher incomes there, when they have higher incomes. So overall, the share of corporate taxes in total direct taxes has gone down, and which is also impacting people, my friends. Okay. Now let's look at the choices here. We discussed corporation tax, which is the same as company tax, or what we say, corporate tax. What is excise duty? Excise duty is charged on goods manufactured and consumed within the country. Okay. See, there are two major things that are not covered under the under GST. Okay, goods and services taxes. What is not covered? One is alcohol, the other is fuel. Your petrol, diesel are not covered under GST, so they are covered under excise duty. These two major ones. Okay. So let me take you further on this. And what else should I explain to you? Customs duty. Customs duty is imposed on exports and imports. Okay. Let me take you to the next one. What is it about? It is about, my friends, where does a paisa go? So most of the paisa go from where does the paisa go? The paisa goes here into paying interest. Most of the paisa goes towards payment of interest. 20% of our paisa, 20% of 50 lakh crore rupees will go towards making interest payments. What are these interest payments about? Interest payments on old loans plus those loans that have become mature this year. So it includes principal as well. Okay. So couple of things I have to explain to you is, one, centrally sponsored scheme, and then of course central sector scheme. What is central sector scheme? A central sector scheme is one where it's 100% funded by the central government, implemented by the central government. It is funded by the central government, implemented by the central government. Typically, a good example would be PM Kisan. PM Kisan is a scheme, the full name would be Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi. Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi. Okay. Under this scheme, 6,000 rupees is paid by the central government to a farmer on an annual basis. So 6,000 per annum is paid by the central government to a farmer under this scheme. So it's completely funded. See, that's why it's called central sector scheme. But there is something called centrally sponsored scheme. Sponsored is a keyword. In these kinds of schemes, both central government and state governments fund and carry out these schemes, implement these schemes. Especially the state implements, but center also funds. The central, usually the ratio is 70-30, 60-40, or in some cases 50-50. Central government and the state government would split bills. Okay. A good example would be Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana. Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana. Fair? So you have all of these schemes, my friends. From here, now that you know where the paisa is going, let's look at some of the subsidies. So subsidies are a major, some people argue, drain on the economy. I don't look at it that way. As your teacher, I look at it very differently, my friends. Subsidy, in a simple commonsensical language, is discount. What is it? Discount. Or simply put, under recovery. It can be called under recovery. Okay. So under recovery, or what is it? Discount. Let's say the government gives subsidy. On what kinds of subsidy it gives? Fertilizer, food, petroleum. Yeah, it gives subsidies. You can remember as 3 Fs: fuel, food, fertilizer, plus education, plus railways, plus you look at something like buses also. I'm in Telangana. Government has, it does not. It's bus travel is free for women. It's free for women. It's subsidized. Railways is subsidized. So the government charges you less than what it costs the government of India to transport you from point A to point B. Okay. So how much are we spending on all these subsidies? Considerably large amount of money. So last year's the budget estimate for fertilizer was 1,64,000 crore, but now it actually have revised the number that it's going to be higher. It's going to be higher. So there's a lot of subsidy, my friends. A lot of things. Don't ever begrudge the poor people. Okay, it's most of this paisa goes to poor people. So during the COVID year, the government of India spent 5,41,000 crore rupees on food subsidy. Do you know that? 5.41 lakh crore rupees was spent in 1 year by the government of India on food subsidy. And that happened because of migration, the COVID, when people lost jobs and all. So when people say that the government didn't do well, you should know the number. 5.41 lakh crore was spent by the government of India on food subsidy. And remember, from that year till 2028, food grains are not subsidized, they are free. 80 crore people in India get free food grains. Free food grains. Okay. So from there, let's take it further. So I have, will it be better for the government to try and make the fiscal deficit closer to zero? Not really. Yeah, it's not possible. We will always run deficits because just about 1.6% of India's population pays income tax. Do you know that? I'm not talking of people who file returns. I'm talking of just the people. See, before I take you to this, 22.4 million people, that is 2.24 crore people in India pay income tax. Just 2.24 crore people paid income tax last year. Okay, in 2023. That's the last number, 2023 available data. Think about it. So when people talk about this 1 crore, 1 lakh rupees in the pockets of people is going to boost the economy, I have my own doubts. Yeah, I have done the homework. I know the numbers. So as your teacher, when I give you the numbers, it becomes that much easier for me to take it, to the next level. That is, I can analyze this, because I know the numbers. I've gone through the numbers. Now, this graphic comes directly from the budget document. Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to discuss all of these things. I'm just going to tell you a few things. Like, for example, we have the defense allocation, 4.91 lakh crore rupees. 4.91 lakh crore rupees. Okay. Of this, just 1.8 lakh crore. 1.8 lakh crore is for, capex. Is capex. What is capex? Capital expenditure. So 1.8 lakh crore rupees could be used by the armed forces, the defense forces, to procure weapons. The rest of the paisa will go towards salaries and pensions. You got it now? Yeah. So in this kind of thing, how are we going to protect ourselves? That is why we need to step up, and the country needs to come clean on payment of taxes. I know that's a tall order. Okay. So all of these things, when you home affairs and everything, it talks of the central paramilitary forces like CRPF, CISF, everything is budgeted, anti-NICLAO operations and everything. Okay. So from here, now that you know some of these allocations, I'm going to discuss a few of them. The budget has certain numbers and certain ideas. The idea, central theme in this entire budget, like last year, has been Viksit Bharat, a fully developed India in its 100th year of independence. Yeah. So Viksit Bharat. What has been the theme of this particular budget? Annadata, Garib, Youth and Nari. That is Annadata, farmer, Garib, poor, youth, young people, and Nari, women. 4 are the dominating themes in this budget. Okay. I won't take you through those ideas. I'll take you through real numbers. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, the government is seized of the matter of creating jobs. It wants to create jobs. See, ladies and gentlemen, please understand. India would need to produce at least, you know, 7 point. India would need to produce at least 7 crore jobs, 7 point, 5 million jobs every year per year till 2030 to be able to effectively engage the working population. We need to produce at least 75 lakh jobs every year. Every year, my friends, till 2030. Is it possible? Difficult, not impossible though. Okay, but there is a problem here. The problem is that most people are not greatly skilled, and that's why the government has been putting a lot of emphasis on upskilling and everything. Okay, see, as you would have understood by now that I'm more I'm focusing more on data and all that, not all these allocations, because allocations by now you would have read in all these newspapers, columns and all that stuff. Okay, let me take you through this. What are the 4 job generation things? Agriculture, manufacturing, MSME, and startups. So I'll take you through each of this. So look at this. The government of India calls these 4 engines of development: agriculture, MSME, micro, small and medium enterprises, investments and exports. Okay, so where are we? I'll pick one of these, each of these rather. Let me take you to agriculture. So I put this in green because of agriculture thing. I'm not going to discuss a lot about agriculture, except that some basic data will help, in light of which this will help. Okay, see, India's food exports last year were 2.2 lakh crore. Total exports, agriculture exports were 2.2 lakh crore in the last financial year. 2.2 lakh crore. Our we produce 11% of the global food grain production, 11. Okay, our share in global food production is 11%. Our share in global food exports, how much? Is just under 3%. Under 3%. Okay, under 3%. And this is overall food exports. Overall food exports. Now, if you look at processed food, we are around 1.5%. So, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of scope for our people to contribute, and of course, the government to come in with better measures to push our people to be more productive. So, productivity is an issue, my friends. Here, see, total exports, food grade exports, food exports. Our share in global food, production, 3% is a total, is a percentage of the total percentage of food exports from India, and this is within the food exports. Let's say subcategory 1.5% processed food. In global processed food exports, our share is just 1.5%. And ladies and gentlemen, food processing, sauces, we have chips, all kinds of foods basically. It's a $1 trillion industry. 1 trillion, my friends, is what? Something like 8.5 lakh crore rupees. That's a lot of money, isn't it? 85 lakh crore rupees. 85 lakh crore rupees. That's the opportunity that is staring in us in our face. 85 lakh crore, is the size of this particular thing within India, but we have not tapped it anywhere close to what we should be doing. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, the next one. In light of all this, okay, one more thing is Pradhan Mantri Dhan Dhanya Krishi Yojana. What is this about? I have put everything here, so I'll bring in extra stuff that is not in the budget, okay, which will help us understand things better. Like, this scheme is about covering 100 districts to increase what? Productivity, which I told you is very low. In India, agriculture suffers from low productivity, low mechanization, that is use of machinery, tractors and all that, threshers and all. So low productivity, low machinery, fragmented land holdings. 98% of India's land holdings are small and marginal farmers. They're small and large, less than 2 hectares. Less than 2 hectares of land, like they make for 98% of the total land holdings. That's a humongous number, my friends. Okay, so, and of course, once a farmer would produce something like tomatoes, there's a tomato crop. The farmer does not sell that day or the next day. the crop would go bad. So we don't have post-harvest storage facilities. We need to upgrade them, cold storages, everything. So this is the idea, to cover 100 districts, to increase productivity, adopt crop diversification, not just rice wheat, so that farmers don't suffer from an oversupply of rice and wheat. Okay, so if I have rice, you have rice, and everybody is growing rice, then it's a problem, my friends. But we grow different crops, that would also lead to stable prices for rice, plus we get better prices for other crops as well. Okay, now something beyond this, rural prosperity and resilience. This is there in the budget. This is there in the budget. It talks about underemployment in agriculture. This has been the bane of Indian agriculture. Disguised unemployment. What is disguised unemployment? See, in a small piece of land, small patch of land, let's say 1 acre of land, there will be 4 people working, 5 people, sometimes 10 people working. Now, this entire family works on 2 acres, 2 acres of land, when 4 people would do. But these 6, the other 6 don't find work elsewhere. That's where they end up working here. They are actually unemployed, but they are disguised as employed there. So it is disguised unemployment. So we can upskill these people and maybe move them to industrial zones and all. But that would call for upskilling. A lot of people in India are not skilled enough. Yeah. So, of course, how do we reinvigorate the rural economy? When you upskill with better technology and everything, you are putting money into the incomes into the hands of people. You give them job, you put money into their hands. When you put money into their hands, they buy goods and services, and that is how you push up the overall parameters up in the rural economy. So what's more? Well, of course, in the Kisan credit card, there is now, earlier the loan limit was 3%. Now it's 5%. Sorry, 3 lakh rupees. Now it is 5 lakh rupees. Okay. So it has been increased. So if I have a Kisan credit card, earlier I could withdraw, I could take a loan of only up to 3 lakh rupees. Now I can take up to 5 lakh rupees. These are all collateral based. Nothing is free. Nothing is free. But still, availability of credit is a very, very important thing. As you can see here, I told you here, yeah, availability of credit, and that is coming through Kisan credit cards. So again, we are now looking at crop diversification. Crop diversification is about going away from rice, wheat, and historically and the normal crops that we have always looked at growing. Now we are looking at pulses. So we import a lot of pulses. Why don't we become self-reliant? Because when you import, you pay in dollars. You pay in foreign currency, not just dollars, foreign currency. So that money could be saved. Plus the fact that you grow pulses would mean you are diversifying crop. You are that much less vulnerable to market forces of supply and demand. You got the idea there? Yeah. So from there, we could go to, of course, MSME. Micro, small, and medium enterprises. Ladies and gentlemen, these guys, before I give you the number, before I give you the data about this particular sector, I would like to tell you that the recent budget, the latest budget, has changed the definition of MSME. How? It's the definition of MSME, as I wrote here, is based on investment and turnover. Investment and turnover. These are all in rupees crore. Earlier, a micro unit, a small scale industrial unit, up to 1 crore was seen as a micro unit. Now, a capital of 2.5 lakh crore rupees. Sorry, 2.5 crore rupees. So, if a business unit has a capital of, capital is investment. In what? Plant and machinery. So, these are all industrial units. These are all industrial units. So, remember, my friends, 1 crore MSMEs are registered with the central government. 1 crore. This is not small scale. 1 crore is big number, my friends. They employ 7.5 crore people. So these, these MSME, if one of these has a capital of less than 2.5 crore, it will be classified micro. Now that it should not have a turnover of more than 10 crore. These are the definitions. Okay. What would be a small enterprise? Something that has a turnover of less than 100 crores and an investment of less than 25 crores. Medium would be something like 125 crores in investment and 500 crores, I guess. Yeah, 500 crores in turnover. So this is how it is, my friends. Now, having looked at these things, you need to appreciate the fact that you know this is a seriously important sector for Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He has this great vision that Indians, we should be able to create jobs for others, not just for themselves. Not that we should be we should be a land of job seekers. That we should be a land of job creators. That's what he says basically. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me take you through a few more things here. Focus areas in MSME: 1 crore registered MSMEs. Okay, employs 7.5 crore people. Think about it. There were no such norms earlier, my friends. Today, in the last 7-8 years, things have changed drastically. Now, more and more people have jobs. Think about the 7.5 crore households that have one member working here, which is actually raising the quality of life for these workers. Now, again, this particular budget has a new scheme, focus product scheme for what? Footwear and leather. This is very important in Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, and Bihar. Okay, so this focus would help create 22 lakh jobs in this sector. 22 lakh jobs, turnover of 4 lakh crore rupees. Think of the amount of tax that would come through this, through this, what we say, through these units. Yeah. At the same time, exports of this turnover of 4 lakh crores, but we could export 1 lakh crore worth of stuff. Leather, it could be footwear, bags, it could be anything, my friends. Okay. So the idea is to create jobs. The idea is to create jobs and make sure the economy chugs along on the fine path. Toy sector. Again, the government of India has been seized of this matter because we have been importing a lot of toys from around the world, especially from China. The Chinese toy industry has killed the Indian toy industry. Even Lattu, the small Lattu, basically, yeah, we had bought from in recent past. We were buying from China, but government of India is saying that let's have small clusters of toy making in all these things, which will create jobs for the locals, plus which will create an entire ecosystem. So you create one particular part of the toy, the rubber unit there will create another part. So there could be a local assembly. This would also provide employment to people. There is one in Karnataka that is employing thousands of people. Earlier it was not there, but now it is generating thousands of crores or crores or rupees in revenue for the local government, for the business persons, and for the employees. All net in net. Okay. Now let me take you to again MSME. The government is also focusing on food processing. I told you a while ago that food processing is a major area. Food processing is a major area. The government is now talking about setting up one institute in Bihar where people would be taught how to process food, and not just in Bihar. We are talking of the entire Northeast region, which is very rich in food technology and lot of labor rich place. So, and of course educated, most people here are educated, so that actually also brings in a better quality of workforce. Yeah, our own folks now up there, see this enhanced income for farmers, scaling entrepreneurship for the entire youth, not just for the Bihar, for everyone else in the Northeast as well. Now, what about first time entrepreneurs? Let's say you're a first time entrepreneur, you want to set up, you're a woman, or if I belong to the scheduled caste community or scheduled tribe community, I would be given a loan up to 2 crore rupees. Can you believe that? The government is willing to offer me a term loan of up to 2 crore rupees, up to for 5 lakh new entrepreneurs. If you think these are the hearsay, oh, come on, the government won't ever do that. No, ladies and gentlemen, the government started Mudra way back. Micro units, development and refinancing agency, Mudra loans and all that. Sishu, Kishore, Tarun loans. Every year, at least 2.5 lakh crore rupees is given in Mudra loans to people. Every year. Think of it, my friends. Yeah. So, again, a major problem faced by MSME is not paisa. It's not that they don't have credit facilities. The problem is local regulatory offer. There is this, let's say you own a toy unit. Some labor inspector will come from here. There is another assistant labor inspector will come. Some sales and some GST guy will come. There is a lot of regulatory, I would say maze that a business person, an MSME business person has to move through. And that's something that the government is looking at cutting down basically. making life easy, making business easy. Okay. Now, direct taxes. This is where I will spend the last 10 minutes, my friends. Everyone's talking of the IT relief. So I am not really enthusiastic about this. Why? I'll tell you something. Okay. So no new tax, no tax basically on income up to 12 lakh rupees. But look at this. I told you a while ago, just about 2.2 crore people in India paid any tax, paid income tax. This is Government of India data. The minister mentioned this in the parliament. Okay. Now, of these people who pay tax, not those who file returns, think about basically, they already been paying taxes. Now, people are really struggling today. Why are they struggling? In recent past, inflation has been going up. Cost of living has been going up. Education expenses for the family going up, for the children going up. Medical expenses going up. Yeah. What about wages, salaries? Stagnant. See, all these have gone up. I'll tell you something more. Let me give you some more data here. 22% has been the CAGR, compounded annual growth rate in personal loans in 3 years up to financial year 24. In 3 years up to financial year 24, personal loans, which are unsecured loans, have gone up by 22%. At the same time, 24% has been the credit card. This is personal loan. Credit card loans. People have borrowed on their credit cards in the 3 years up to financial year 24. Why will people borrow on credit cards? They're so expensive. Interest rates are extremely high, but people are borrowing. People are borrowing because people are struggling. How much has the wage growth been? Between 2019 and 2023, wage growth has been 8% for all workers. For IT workers, it has been 4%. Let me repeat. Wage growth has been about 0.8% for all workers and 4% for IT workers. So when you talk about all these numbers, cost of living has increased, extremely high. See, the rich have a lot of things going for them. They're rich. Industrialists, big companies, corporates. Let's look at corporates. Those who pay taxes, corporates. They have, a lot of tax relief. They have production-linked incentive schemes. Okay. Now, what about the poor? They have direct benefit transfer, subsidies, free ration, free money. Why? PM Kisan and all. What about people like the salaried middle class? But it is where people are struggling. There is no relief, and that's why this particular relief is likely, that people say, is likely to change the numbers. But I'm not a great fan of this. Since October 2024, the urban consumer is missing. There is no urban consumer. There is been no demand. The demand has been rural side only. And I told you why. Because of a good kharif crop. Okay. So let's hope things work. Like the finance minister had mentioned, like the prime minister is hopeful, and of course all the economists basically. Yeah. You see, without numbers I don't talk. So all the numbers I shared all the numbers with you. Okay. So what is this tax collected source? See, this is let's say you have a cousin, or let's say you have a family member who's studying abroad. So earlier, when you were sending money, you have to pay a tax here. Now that has been removed. Removal of tax collection at source on education remittances abroad. Only if the money that you are sending has been raised through loans, approved by the government. But if the money is sent without loan, your own paisa, you have to pay tax. So it's always good to borrow money from a bank and send it abroad. Okay. But think about those. Most of the people borrow education loans and go abroad. It is a big relief for the families, because on top of this, interest. On top of this, there is interest rate. Interest rate to the bank. That has to be paid to the bank. Interest to be paid to the bank plus this TCS to the government. Now the TCS is gone. It's good for the family. Okay, well, yeah. If if you send money for any other purpose, non-education purposes, you still have to pay tax. But earlier, up to anything beyond 7, you have to pay tax. Now, up to 10 lakhs, you don't have to pay any tax, which is again a good thing, my friends. Yeah, it's a big relief for a lot of people. What are the other measures? What are the other measures? Swami. Swami is basically a fund. There is a certain full form for this. It's all about those homes that are stuck because the builder has gone bad, incomplete stuff and all that stuff, incomplete homes and all. 15,000 crore has been given this year by the government of India to SBI, which is the lead manager for all these funds, all these basically funds. Okay, they will take care of funds to make sure that the homes are completed. Homes are completed. 1 lakh housing units. A lot of people's lifetime savings go into buying homes, especially apartments, and this is where a lot of companies have taken advantage of the vulnerability of poor people, yeah, the middle class and all. And the government has stepped in. This is the second time they have done this. They are taking care of things. Let's hope they take better care. Asset monetization plan. Oh, the government of India has a lot of assets, roads, airports, and all the stuff. So the government says, oh, we have so many things. Why don't we lease them? We lease them. We will monetize this asset. We have this road, we have this airport. Let's monetize this. Let's open a tender. Whoever bids the highest, we'll give it to them. Then they will collect the money from the public. If let's say Adani runs Guwahati airport, yeah, Adani runs Jaipur airport, Trivandrum airport also. So what they do is they run the airport. Upkeep is entirely of theirs. So whatever revenue they get is theirs. But every year they give a lump sum to the government. Okay. So what is the government doing? It's monetizing its asset. Now the same paisa is taken by the government to build other assets, new assets. What is the plan? To collect 10 lakh crore rupees and build new assets, new airports, new ports, new expressways, and all that. Okay. The government says that while we are willing to spend 1.12 lakh crore rupees, we want state governments also to spend money. So what they are doing, state governments say we don't have paisa. So the state governments are being given a 50-year interest-free loan. You know what? 1.5 lakh crore rupees. 1.5 lakh crore rupees is what the central government is giving to state governments interest free for 50 years to build capital assets. Capital assets. Okay. Roads, airports, schools, hospitals, primary healthcare centers, and all. So, state governments are not willing. Central government is stepping in, and that is what they are doing. They are encouraging, incentivizing state governments to spend money in target areas. Okay. Jal Jeevan Mission. The idea is to spend to ensure that there is a tapped water to every rural household. Tapped water to every rural household. But the target year was 2024. 100% of rural households shall have a tapped water supply. But that didn't happen. So it has been extended till 2028. 2028 to ensure 100% coverage. This has been a greatly successful scheme. Okay. So the last, but I think this is almost there. FDI in insurance. FDI in insurance, my friends. FDI is foreign direct investment. The current, FDI cap is 74%, but from 1st April 2025, in the next financial year, it's going to be 100%. Okay, so which means the total capital can be brought in by a foreign insurance company to set up an entire business on its own in India. So if it's, let's say there is a foreign investor today, they can invest up to 74% in the joint venture with an Indian company. Later, from 1st April, they can invest 100%. Okay, or they can start a new company on their own, which is a good thing, my friends. They bring in paisa, they bring in. See, this is a capital intensive business. There are no profits overnight, so it's a long gestation period business. Gig workers, these are contract workers, delivery guys. There is no formal employer-employee relationship. Like I work for Time, so Time is my employer. I've been here for more than 2 decades, so we have a formal relationship. Whereas in the case of gig workers, there is no formal relationship. Cab drivers, you have delivery guys, you have contract workers, all kinds of contract workers. So here, these guys they don't have health cover. So what if something goes wrong? Who will take care of the family, kind of thing? So the government says, if these guys, which are 1 crore in number, okay, 1 crore gig workers, if they register on the e-Shram portal, Shram is, what is it? Shram is, what we say, work, basically, okay, labor. E-Shram portal, if they register here, they will be given ID cards, and that would actually give them access to healthcare facilities under the Pradhan Mantri Ayushman Bharat Yojana. Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, or also called Ayushman Bharat. Okay. So now, of course, Bihar. Everyone's been talking about Bihar. Bihar has got this, Bihar has got that. See, last year it was Andhra Pradesh. This year, in October, November, Bihar is going to have an election. And the NDA is, the BJP is a partner in the NDA. And the NDA also has the Janata Dal United, which is the ruling, which has the ruling guy, the chief minister there in Bihar. So, all governments have done this. I don't see anything exceptional about the BJP running the show here. So, they plan to start a makhana board. Bihar is the largest producer of fox nuts. Okay. Makhana is basically a delicacy. Of course, it can be eaten in many ways. And Bihar grows in large numbers. But individual farmers don't have much of a bargaining power. So the government of India is looking at setting up a makhana board, which will, help farmers raise production with better practices and marketing. How to market them, get better deal from the buyers. For this end, they are looking at starting FPOs, Farmers Producers Organizations. Farmers Producers Organizations. So they come together, and of course, they can actually, get a better deal from buyers. A single farmer may not get a better deal, but a collective always gets, almost always gets a better deal from buyers. Okay. So from here, I think we are almost in the end. So, ladies and gentlemen, Bihar is looking at, the government is looking at setting up 2 new airports in Bihar. A new airport is called a Greenfield Airport. Greenfield Airport, whereas an existing one, which is under renovation, is called a Brownfield Airport. Okay. So 2 new airports will be set up in Rajgir, which is a Buddhist, a holy place. And of course, what we have, Bhagalpur, on the Ganga. So Patna Airport, of course, will be expanded. It's called Jayaprakash Narayan International Airport. It's a very small airport. There is this river called Kosi, and there is a canal called Western Kosi. The government is looking at funding it in such a way that, the water goes to 50,000 hectares, around the entire canal area. Okay. So 50,000 hectares of land could be irrigated. So this will benefit thousands of families, thousands of farmers. And I told you a while ago, National Institute of Food Technology will be set up in Bihar. This is for food processing activities in Northeast India. Okay. That's all from me, my friends. Thank you for being here. So I hope you learned a few good things today. And, if there is anything that we could bring to you in terms of better representation, in terms of you have any feedback with to share with us, please go ahead, leave in the comments. Thank you so much for this. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much.